Welcome back to the deep dive. You know the drill. You send us sources, messages, bits and pieces that have caught your eye, and, well, we dive deep.
Yeah, we try to make sense of it all.
And today, we've got a name popping up again, someone we've touched on before, which is always interesting.
Definitely.
We're digging into a completely new message from this individual. And the idea is to see how this fresh piece fits, how it maybe changes how we saw the older stuff.
Exactly. So we have this new written message, the Neue Nachricht, and to um, really get the context, we're also looking back at some of that, well, let's call it distinctive material from the DOZCREW YouTube channel.
Ah, yes, Doza Crew. That definitely rings a bell.
Right. The stuff you flagged for us before, we've got snippets from their tracks, Buzzle, Mahlzeit, Keule, DRUFF, and our own earlier deep dives on Mahlzeit, Keule, and that voice message they used.
Okay, so it's a chance to connect some dots?
Yeah.
Or maybe find things are even weirder than we thought.
Could go either way, couldn't it?
All right, let's jump into this Neue Nachricht then. First impression. The tone just leaps out. It's informal, sure, but wow, it's got a real edge. Aggressive, almost.
You're very sharp, yeah.
Right.
And it's all focused on this VH fondant banditos.
Which, for anyone not up on their German insults, well, let's just say it's not exactly a compliment. It's pretty dismissive, quite negative.
Definitely loaded language. But
Yeah.
what's striking to me is how almost cartoonish the put-downs are.
What do you mean?
Well, describing someone with a Playmobil beard and saying they have Wasserpistol and water pistols, it immediately paints this picture of someone, I don't know, maybe trying too hard, a bit silly.
Out of touch, maybe.
Yeah, or seen as ineffective. And then there's their chronisch komische, their Fantamagana tip, like the
Really?
chronically funny Fantamagana type. Fantamagana meaning Fatamagana, a mirage.
So implying he's ridiculous, maybe a bit pathetic even. Unreal.
That seems to be the vibe, yeah. Reinforces this image of someone not taken seriously.
And building on that, the sender makes this really odd comparison. Den kleinen Rothaarigen mit dem Schnäuzer-Zeichentrick, dieser mexikanische Cowboy, der nicht klarkam.
The little red-haired guy with the mustache from the cartoon, the Mexican cowboy who couldn't cope.
Right. It's a bit vague. Maybe Speedy Gonzales comes to mind for some. But the specific cartoon isn't really the point, is it?
No, the point seems to be incompetence. Someone who's just failing. A figure of fun.
But then it shifts, doesn't it? It moves beyond just making fun of the guy. The sender's getting frustrated about this person's involvement in Kinderplanung with their Frau family planning with the woman.
And the best friend running away. It's interesting they mention that even though apparently no child has actually been conceived yet.
Which suggests this person is seen as a disruptive force, maybe, causing chaos in relationships.
That's certainly the implication, and this is where, like you said, the tone really darkens. It goes from mockery to actual concern, or maybe even fear.
Yeah, the sender flat out calls him a gefährlicher Mann gewesen, a dangerous man.
And tells this story about him believing in aliens, wanting to report the sender to aliens.
It's bizarre. Job für den Ausischen, dass zu mir wollte auch noch, der dachte, Fahrrad, der wollte direkt die Außen rufen. Like, he thought the sender was betraying him to the aliens, wanted to call the aliens right away.
I mean, that's quite a delusion to attribute to someone.
And there's that really unsettling bit about being hit over the head by them Toter, the dead one. The context is completely missing, but it adds to this picture of, well, strangeness and threat.
It really does. It paints him as irrational, maybe unstable, and definitely perceived as threatening by the person writing this message.
You can feel the sender's frustration. They just want him gone. Ob der jetzt endlich weg ist der Arsch. Is that asshole finally gone?
The language is strong.
And the conclusion. Eine Bedrohung für normale Menschen. A threat to normal people. And just to hammer home the visual one last time.
Trothaige halt, ne? Mit Playmobil B. Red-haired, with a Playmobil beard.
So the red hair and that beard are obviously key identifiers for the sender.
Okay, so now, let's bring in the Dozic Shrew stuff. Because this individual described so vividly, so negatively here, it sounds very much like he could be the person whose voice we heard in Mahlzeit Keule.
Right. Our previous dives into that track, we spent a lot of time on that voice message they sampled. It sounded so ordinary, didn't it?
Completely mundane, yeah. Talking about maybe a night shift, something about night.
But then Doza Crew twisted it into something really quite unsettling in the track itself.
Exactly. So could this gefährlicher man with the alien delusions be the same guy from that ordinary voice memo?
It's quite a thought. Let's recap that Doza Crew material briefly. Mahlzeit, Keule.
Yeah.
The track itself was built around these weird, repetitive vocal loops.
Extremely repetitive. Things like Mahlzeit, Gezeitel, Weven, was Lut da, was, ja, haben, wünschen, den Richen, wünscht dir, wünscht der Weggabe. Just chopped up sounds.
And Dear UFF was similar, right? That abstract soundscape. Bob Richtig Ka. Bob Richtig Ka. Ko. Very jarring, very abstract, almost disorienting to listen to.
In our first deep dive on Mahlzeit Keule, we basically said it wasn't really a song in the traditional sense, more like an audio collage.
And the main focus was trying to figure out that voice message they'd woven in.
Yeah, because when you isolated that original voice message, it was, like you said, surprisingly normal.
It just sounded like some guy, maybe tired after work, mentioning nicht, which we figured meant night shift, maybe a slightly odd pronunciation, a nicht, casual chat.
But Doza Crew took those little bits. VV was plat odor was, repeated them, distorted them.
And created something genuinely unsettling, yeah.
Yeah.
Very abstract.
Which got us talking about, Doza Crew's whole anonymous thing. What were they trying to do? Was it about art, challenging authorship, just focusing on sound? All those questions about taking digital content, somebody's voice, and turning it into, well, that.
Yeah, how easily personal stuff gets repurposed online, sometimes in really strange ways. Then our second deep dive focused only on that original message itself.
Right. Mahlzeit Keule, the message. We zeroed in on the actual audio fragment recorded, almost 3 years prior, around January 23rd?
The snippet was tiny. OTAS plays SAAS, yeah.
Still sounded tired, maybe stressed. We noted the informal German, the slang K for okay, suggesting he was talking to someone he knew well.
And that phrase, hätte gleich kommen können, made us think he'd missed out on something. A party maybe? A get-together?
Seemed plausible. And the whole Ink for Nicht thing, the night shift connection, led us down that path of speculating about jobs.
Healthcare, factory work, security, air traffic control was even thrown in there.
We were covering the bases, and then the big mystery SAS.
Ah, yes, SAS software.
Or Special Forces. We couldn't agree.
It just showed how much ambiguity there was, how little you can know from such a tiny fragment, right?
Absolutely. We stressed that. It was all analysis based on scraps. But even so, we pulled out clues. Language, maybe location, possible work, relationships, someone visiting. Be such.
Okay, so now, let's try to connect it all. Back to the Neue Nachricht. The VH van den Banditos.
The red-haired guy with the Playmobil beard.
Could those descriptions, the beard, the water pistols, somehow relate back to the general weirdness of the Mahlzeit Keule track? Or just this guy's perceived strangeness?
It's a leap, maybe, but the sender does seem to fixate on these visual details. It adds to the overall picture of perceived eccentricity, doesn't it?
It does. And that feeling the sender has, the frustration, the fear, does it kind of resonate with the unsettling vibe of the distorted voice in the song?
In a weird way, yes. It's like the song's abstract unease accidentally mirrors the sender's real-world anxiety about this person. The chaotic sound reflecting a perceived chaotic personality.
And the red hair. That wasn't in the original voice message analysis at all, was it?
Not a hint. But now it's another piece that just slots into place this seemingly ordinary voice, the source for this bizarre art piece.
Belongs to a redhead with a Playmobil beard who, according to this new message, thinks aliens are after him and is considered dangerous.
The contrast is stark. It really is.
You have this mundane voice memo, probably recorded on a whim, maybe during a break becoming part of this avant-garde sound thing. And the source is someone described as, well, a dangerous buffoon, essentially.
The absurdity is pretty striking. 1 minute he's muttering about a night shift or SAS. The next he's supposedly rambling about extraterrestrials and scaring people.
And his voice, this tiny fragment, gets immortalized in this obscure, repetitive track that most people would probably just skip.
Yeah, the banality of the original audio versus the sender's intense negative perception in the Neue Nachricht. It's quite the disconnect, almost surreal.
Makes you think, doesn't it? About the gap between those fleeting digital footprints we leave and the possibly much messier reality of someone's life. So wrapping this up, this Neue Nachricht gives us a much, much more vivid picture of the person behind the Mahlzeit Keule voice, though vivid and maybe pretty disturbing.
It puts that original voice memo in a whole new and not exactly comforting context.
Yeah, and it really shows how looking back at old material Even something as weird as a Doza crew track can suddenly shed light on new information in unexpected ways.
It really does, and it leaves you with that final thought, given everything we've pieced together now, the mundane voice, the strange track, this alarming message.
Yeah.
What is the real nature of this bedrohung the sender feels?
How much is perception versus reality?
Exactly. How do we react to people we see as eccentric or strange or other? Does the sender's fear seem justified based on this, or is it an overreaction? Or maybe it's impossible to tell from the outside.
It really highlights all those layers of interpretation, doesn't it? And how easily misunderstandings can happen, maybe fueled by things like, well, alien delusions or Playmobil beards.
A lot to mull over there.
Indeed. Well, thanks again for sending these sources our way. This was certainly a fascinating connection to uncover.
Always interesting to see where the threads lead.
And thanks, too, for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon to unravel something else. Keep sending us those intriguing puzzle pieces.